I used to think if one day I almost died, my parents would be the first people by my bedside, sobbing uncontrollably, clutching my hand, and praying. But it turned out, on that day, they chose the spotlight and applause for their perfect son. I lay motionless in a hospital bed, ribs broken, blood seeping beneath layers of stark white bandages, and waited for the people who should have loved me the most. 4 days after the accident, their first message was, "Are you okay?" But instead, your brother received a huge award that day. You should be proud. I didn't die in that terrible collision, but a part of me shattered from that moment on a part that would never heal again. My name is Lydia. I'm 31 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, and working as a design team leader at a tech company. People often say I'm strong, independent, the kind of woman who can handle anything life throws her way. But on that fateful Friday afternoon, I felt as fragile as a crystal glass smashed onto a tiled floor. I was driving home from work when an SUV ran a red light and crashed directly into the side of my car. The screeching sound of metal colliding echoed, the world spun violently, and then everything went numb. When I woke up, I found myself in the intensive care unit, wrapped in bandages. The doctors told me I'd had emergency surgery to stop internal bleeding, had broken 2 ribs, and fractured my right leg. They said I was lucky to have survived. I didn't feel lucky. I just felt cold. In my hazy consciousness, I asked the nurse, "Where are my parents?" She looked at me, hesitated a few seconds, then softly replied, "They haven't arrived yet, but we contacted them right after you were admitted, listed as your emergency contacts." I nodded, trying to suppress the pain in my chest, convincing myself they must be on a flight from Denver. Maybe they needed time to arrange things. Maybe my mom was too shocked to answer the phone. I sent a text not just once, but several times, every few hours, typing the same short message, "I'm okay. I want to hear your voices." No one replied. 4 days passed in the coldness of the hospital room and the painful silence. I had no siblings other than Ethan, my younger brother, whom my parents always called the genius of the family. Ethan was their pride, the dazzling light onto whom they poured all their expectations. Meanwhile, I was just their daughter, the self-sufficient one, never complaining, never asking for anything. On the 6th day, an old friend of my mom, Clara, visited me. She lived in Salem and heard about my accident from someone else. When she saw me lying there, she sighed, set down the flowers, and whispered, "Poor girl. Well, at least your parents had some comfort that day." Ethan was honored in front of the whole state council. It was a grand award ceremony. I looked at her, mouth dry. "What did you say?" "Oh, you didn't know? The Young Engineer of the Year award. Your parents posted pictures all over Facebook, even live streamed the event. Everyone commented how proud they were. I don't remember how I reacted. Maybe I laughed. Or maybe I cried without realizing tears were streaming down my face. Everything became blurry. It felt like I was reaching up from a deep pit, and instead of pulling me out, the people I loved most turned and walked away because they had a party to attend. The doctor said I should focus on recovery, but how could I recover when my heart was breaking apart? I wasn't jealous of Ethan, really. My brother was talented, hardworking, and I'd never denied that. But I was also their child. I had also hugged my dad during thunderstorms, called my mom whenever I had a fever. Yet when I nearly died, they chose champagne and applause. I don't know which hurt more, the physical pain or the realization that I would never be enough for them. It took me nearly half a day to regain composure after hearing about Ethan's award ceremony from Clara. My mind kept replaying the image of my mom, Margaret, smiling brightly in the teal dress. She always reserved for special occasions, and my dad, Richard, shaking hands with everyone, proudly introducing his son as if he'd invented a vaccine to save the world. I lay in my hospital bed, IV drip attached to my arm, leg cast dangling awkwardly, and typed on my phone like someone losing her mind. "You knew I had an accident and still attended. Ethan's award ceremony. I've been here 4 days. No messages, no calls. Do you honestly think that's normal? I sent the texts, then lay waiting. My phone screen blurred because tears had already filled my eyes. A response arrived around 9:00 p.m. Lydia, don't make such a big deal out of this. Ethan's event was an important milestone, something we couldn't miss. We couldn't be in 2 places at once. Immediately after, another message, this time from my dad. Do you realize how hard Ethan has worked to achieve this? A national award ceremony. You can stay in the hospital as long as needed, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I typed quickly, fingers trembling. So my life isn't as important as an award certificate? I almost died. I had emergency surgery, broken ribs, and endured pain alone for 4 days. This time my mom called. Her voice wasn't gentle like I'd hoped. Honey, don't talk to me like that. I know you're hurting, but can you stop playing the victim? I gripped the phone tightly. I am a victim. Mom, a victim of an accident, and now a victim of your cruel indifference. Enough, she snapped. I don't have the patience for your complaints. Everyone is stressed because the media is after Ethan since the ceremony. Your dad is busy giving interviews. I can't always be there watching over you. I fell silent. The air was thick and suffocating. I felt that if I heard one more word, I would scream like a mad woman. So I'm a burden? Don't say that, she quickly replied, her voice softening slightly. But you need to understand. Ethan is the one bringing honor to this family. Everything he does matters. And you're fine now, aren't you? Yes, I was alive, but at that moment I wished I hadn't woken up. At least then I wouldn't have had to hear those words from my own mother. I hung up without another word. The phone fell from my hand as I turned toward the wall, letting the pain in my chest spread through my body like fire. The next day, I received a photo from Mom. It showed Ethan on stage, holding a shiny golden trophy. Beneath it was a caption, "Our pride and joy." I didn't reply, just pressed delete. I didn't want to see anything else, but my brain wouldn't let go. Memories I had tried so hard to sweep away now resurfaced clearly. The time I received a college scholarship, my parents had only sent one word, good. The day I got promoted last year, my mother said, "HM, your boss must be easygoing." Ethan was different, always a celebration, always a photo on Facebook with captions like, "This boy was born to shine." I had tried not to be jealous. I told myself I could live well without their recognition. But today, lying among unhealed surgical wounds, I felt completely drained. I didn't want to remain on the sidelines anymore. I sat up painfully but managed to reach for my phone. I sent one final message. If you ever chose me even once in your lives, it must have been a mistake. From now on, don't expect me to keep pretending otherwise. I didn't wait for a reply. For the first time in years, I felt I wasn't begging for affection anymore. I felt angry but clearer than ever. I didn't think I'd ever see their faces again, at least not in the hospital. But exactly 1 week later, on a gloomy afternoon heavy with the smell of antiseptic, the hospital door swung open. My mother, Margaret, walked in first, holding a bouquet of white lilies, followed by my father, Richard, his face tense as if forced to come. I looked at them, feeling empty, no joy, no anger, just cold. "Lydia, it's Mom," she said, a forced smile on her carefully made-up face. "We just came by to see how you're doing." 8 days late, I replied, my voice dry as sandpaper. My father coughed slightly, as if trying to drown the tension. "Your mother was very worried. We've been extremely busy the awards ceremony." I raised my head, looking straight into their eyes. "Or did something else make you suddenly remember you have a daughter?" No one spoke. That silence wasn't new to me. I'd grown up with it, a truth covered beneath layers of fake politeness. I pushed myself up with my arms, pain rippling from my ribs down to my back, but I refused to let them see. I just wanted them to admit the real reason they came. "What do you want?" My mother hesitated, placing the bouquet on the table. It's about Ethan. I chuckled softly, making no attempt to hide my sarcasm. Of course. My father blinked, gripping tightly at the edge of his jacket pocket. Ethan, he's in trouble. You probably heard he got arrested yesterday. Financial fraud charges at his company. What kind of fraud? I asked, though a bad feeling already formed in my gut. The police said something about illegal transfers, falsifying records. They accused him of fraud and embezzling investment funds. But it can't be as serious as they're claiming. There must be some misunderstanding. I crossed my arms, staring at the two people in front of me as if watching a documentary. And now what? Do you need money? My mother quickly nodded. We hired the best lawyer in Portland, but the bail is too high, and we've already spent all our savings. Lydia, can you help? Just this once? I laughed, although it sounded like a thin mirror shattering. Why should I do that? Because he's your brother, my mother shouted, losing her fake gentleness. I raised an eyebrow. And who am I? A stranger or an ATM wearing a hospital gown? My father cut in, his voice low with restrained anger. Aren't you ashamed? Your brother is being publicly humiliated. Our whole family's reputation is being dragged through the mud. This is when we must stick together. Stick together. My fists clenched until my knuckles turned white. When I lay here half dead, no one called. No one visited. Is that your idea of sticking together? You're too sensitive, my mother sighed. Ethan's never been in trouble like this before. Help him through this, and everything will go back to normal. I looked at them for a long moment. It felt like my blood was running backward. Memories of being forgotten, of endless praise for Ethan, stabbed at my heart like needles. No, I said, cutting through the air like a blade. Lydia, my father growled. I have no obligation to rescue someone who has always been favored and never once cared about his sister. Ethan isn't a 6-year-old who broke a vase. He's an adult. He broke the law. He pays the price. My mother fell silent, stepping back as if she'd been slapped. You're tearing this family apart, she whispered. You're turning your back on your own blood. I shook my head. No, this family was never built on genuine love. It's just a show, and I've always been kept off stage. My father's face turned red. You'll regret this, Lydia. Someday, when we're gone, I cut him off. I've regretted it for the past 31 years, always begging for affection from people who never truly loved me. Today, for the first time, I don't feel wrong anymore. The room sank into silence. No one spoke another word. My parents stood there for a few seconds, then turned away. My mother pulled out a tissue, wiping her dry eyes. The door closed behind them with a cold click, like the final punctuation to something that had rotted away long ago. I lay back onto the bed, exhausted yet relieved. For the first time, I chose to stand by myself. 3 days after being discharged, I returned to my small apartment on the 3rd floor of a quiet building in East Portland, the place I once considered my safe haven from both the world and my own family. I thought I could finally breathe, lie quietly on my bed without hearing the heart monitor or smelling antiseptics. But I was wrong. Just as I reached the hallway, balancing on my crutches and fumbling with the key, I heard the sharp click of high heels against concrete. Lydia. I turned around. My mother, she wore the expensive brown fur coat she always put on when she wanted to show off her status. Beside her stood my father, arms crossed, glaring at me like a detective about to interrogate a criminal. I sighed heavily. Please, I just came home from the hospital. Don't start. Don't start? My mother almost screamed, her voice so high a neighbor peeked out through a crack in her door. Do you realize what you're doing? You're destroying this family. I tried to keep my voice calm. By refusing to give money to a criminal? My father took a step forward, his face flushed. He's your brother, Lydia, your own flesh and blood. How can you coldly watch him rot in jail? I'm standing here on crutches because someone ran a red light and slammed into my car. While I was lying in the emergency room, you were at an award ceremony. Don't talk to me about family. My mother started crying not quiet tears, but loud, heaving sobs, clutching her chest as if she'd lost everything. "We've already lost one child, and now we're losing the other," she sobbed. "You're punishing us just because we love Ethan more." I narrowed my eyes, struggling to keep my balance on shaking arms. "So you admit it? You've always loved Ethan more than me?" "It's not like that," she screamed, then lowered her voice as if the truth had slipped out too fast. "It's just he needed us more, and now he needs you. What about me? 4 days alone in the hospital without anyone by my side, does that not count as needing?" My father interrupted. "This isn't about you anymore, Lydia. The family is being pushed into a corner. The press is everywhere. Acquaintances keep calling. Everyone expects Ethan to be bailed out. Our family's reputation is at stake." I nodded. "So family means public image, not the children lying in the hospital with broken bones?" "Don't talk to your mother like that," my father snapped. I stepped back, putting my key into the lock. "You two should leave." "Not until you change your mind." My mother stomped her foot. "You can't keep being this selfish. It's time to prove you're part of this family." I spun around, meeting her gaze. "I was never allowed to be part of this family, Mom. For years, I was just a shadow. Now you only remember me because of my bank account." My father moved forward, his voice lowering dangerously. "This is your last chance, Lydia. If you don't help, we'll never forgive you." I laughed. "Forgive? You've never once apologized to me." "Forgive what?" My mother trembled, tears falling without sincerity. "We don't even know who you are anymore." "Good," I nodded. "And I don't want either of you knowing anything about my life for even one more second." As I opened the door, intending to step inside, my mother grabbed my arm so suddenly that I nearly lost my balance. "Let go," I said, my voice low and firm. "Lydia, you're destroying everything," she screamed. I looked straight into her eyes coldly. "If you don't leave within 5 seconds, I'll call the police. And trust me, I won't regret it." They both froze for a few seconds. Finally, my father pulled her hand away, gripping her shoulder tightly as if preventing her from collapsing. They turned, said nothing more, and disappeared down the stairs. I slammed the door shut, locking all 3 locks, then leaned against it, exhaling sharply. My chest hurt fiercely. I wasn't sure if it was from the unhealed bones or because my heart had just been stripped bare once again. But I knew one thing clearly: I'd done the right thing. I was no longer an obedient shadow. I was myself, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even those who gave birth to me, cross my boundaries ever again. 3 days after the confrontation in front of my apartment, Ethan Sinclair's name flooded every newspaper and morning news segment. The headline on a major financial news site blazed in red: "Young CFO charged with money laundering and multi-million-dollar fraud conspiracy." I sat on the sofa, my right leg still in a cast, propped up on a pillow, a cold cup of coffee in my hand. It wasn't that I hadn't anticipated this, but reality far exceeded my imagination. Ethan wasn't just involved in a few shady accounts, as my parents had suggested. He was one of 3 key suspects in a federal money laundering case involving more than 6 shell companies and millions of dollars funneled overseas through anonymous accounts. The news was everywhere: CNN, Fox, CNBC. They aired footage of Ethan in a charcoal gray suit, hands cuffed, stepping out of the FBI building in downtown Portland, his eyes blank, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. At the same time, the list of accomplices gradually emerged, including several senior executives from Ethan's company. I thought, finally, the perfect illusion has collapsed. My phone rang continuously. Messages came from colleagues, old friends, and even distant relatives I thought had forgotten I existed. But what I didn't expect was the 3rd call that morning, an unfamiliar but recognizable number appearing on my screen. I hesitated a few seconds, then picked up. Silence. Then his voice, hoarse, exhausted, as if he'd swallowed a storm. "Lydia, we need to talk." I leaned back, holding the phone a few inches from my ear. "I thought we'd made things clear. I know you're angry, and I'm not here to blame you anymore." He paused, then continued, "We need you." I closed my eyes, silently counting to 3. "Money again? We no longer have the means. Ethan won't get bail without a new amount." The lawyer withdrew. "Accounts are frozen, and I lost a major client this morning." I opened my eyes. Was he involved in Ethan's case? No, but he said our family is no longer ethically trustworthy. My father's voice choked up. It was the first time I'd ever heard my father, the man always leading meetings, always believing the world must admire his son, admit defeat. "Lydia, if you help us this time, we might save some of our reputation, preserve at least a little bit of Ethan's image going forward." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. "Reputation? Image? Are you really asking me for help? Or are you just worried people will realize we're not the perfect family anymore?" "This isn't the time for blame." "No, it's exactly the time," I replied, sitting up straight, voice hard as stone. "When I was alone and in pain in the hospital, you chose cameras and spotlights. Now, when your golden child's true colors are showing, you come running back to me for help? No chance." "Lydia, your mother has cried herself to sleep," he whispered. "She says if you don't help, we'll lose everything." "I don't care anymore," I said coldly. "And if Mom wants to cry, let her remember the 4 days I waited for a message that never came." He was silent. I lowered my voice slowly. "If you have any respect left for me, don't call again." Then I hung up. That afternoon, I received an email from my mother. I didn't open it. I deleted it. In the days afterward, a few midnight texts arrived, long, emotional messages, vague apologies interwoven with pleas for financial help. I replied to none. News continued to report on the investigation. Several executives had already pleaded guilty, but Ethan kept denying the charges. On social media, the name Ethan Sinclair became a joke golden boy turned ghost. The one praised as a genius was now ruthlessly mocked by internet users. I didn't feel happy, but I didn't feel sorry either. Perhaps all I felt was relief. Standing by my window, watching Portland fade into gray rain, my heart was empty yet light. For the first time in years, I wasn't being dragged back into the chaos called family, and I promised myself I'd never return there again. I thought everything would calm down after I bluntly refused my parents. But then, one Saturday night, as I sat reading news on my laptop, an email popped up with a suspiciously simple subject line, "From Ethan." I stared at the sender's name. The address was from a monitored inmate email system. For a moment, I almost deleted it unread. My heart raced, not from affection, but from a mix of disgust, anger, and curiosity. Finally, I clicked. "Lydia, I know you probably don't want to read this, but I have no one else left to trust. Things are getting worse, and I feel like a pawn sacrificed to protect powerful people. I don't deny my guilt. I participated. I know I was wrong, but I'm not the mastermind. I was just a link between upper management and the money. They're putting everything on me. Lydia, I don't know if you'll believe me, but I'm collapsing under a burden that's not entirely mine. You've always been fair, the only person in the family brave enough to face the truth. Please, if not for me, then for Mom and Dad. Our family is falling apart. I'm begging you." I froze. Something in the tone left me conflicted. This wasn't the usual arrogant, cocky Ethan, no boasting, no avoidance of responsibility, just a confession, direct and desperate. I didn't immediately trust it. I wasn't easily swayed anymore, but I couldn't ignore it either. I sent a quick message to an old friend, Julian, a lawyer I'd known since college who now worked in financial law and had assisted with internal investigations at major companies. I asked simply, if a mid-level employee is accused of financial fraud but claims he's just an executive, not the mastermind, is there a way to verify that? Julian replied in less than 15 minutes. Yes. Check prosecution files and witness statements. If there's higher-level collusion not yet publicly revealed, it'll appear in preliminary indictments or interrogation transcripts. Send me names and company details. I'll help check. I sent him the information, feeling uneasy, as if reopening a door I should have left permanently locked. 2 days later, Julian sent back a PDF file along with a short message. You should read this. Your brother isn't innocent, but he's not the mastermind. At least 3 senior executives are implicated in the FBI's file and are currently under separate investigation. Some accounts Ethan transferred funds through were secondary channels, not initiated by him, but he still willingly participated. I opened the document. Each line sliced through me, confronting me with a harsh reality. Dozens of pages detailed cash flows, connections between individuals, recorded phone calls, and company emails extracted from the system. Ethan had signed several fraudulent transfers. His name appeared in falsified financial documents, but there was also evidence showing he had been directed by others who exploited his inexperience and blind trust. I wondered, did he know what he was doing, or did he intentionally close his eyes to climb the ladder faster? I remembered the way my parents had always praised Ethan. Ethan is exceptionally intelligent. He was born to lead. If he pushes just a little harder, the whole world will know his name. He grew up in an environment where results were valued over morals, where success at all costs was the guiding principle. No wonder he believed he was invincible. I closed my eyes, tightening my fists. Part of me wanted to hit reply and scream at him for his stupidity. Another part wanted to ask him why. But I didn't send anything, no replies, no rescue. Because even if Ethan wasn't the mastermind, he chose that path. No one forced him. No one held a gun to his head. He could have stopped at any time. Instead, he went all the way, and now he must face the consequences. I stood up, pulled back the curtains, and stared out at the city under the drizzling rain. There are some things, no matter how painful, you must accept. And I no longer wanted to save anyone, especially someone who never saw me as family. I thought things would end after I didn't respond to Ethan's email, but my parents had no concept of accepting refusal. If they couldn't persuade me, they'd find ways to make me regret it. A week later, I noticed something strange happening on social media. A cousin I rarely spoke to messaged, Lydia, Aunt Margaret just called my mom and said, "You're so cruel that you're leaving your brother to rot in jail. What's going on?" I felt my blood freeze. A few hours later, another message came from my cousin in New Jersey. Your parents are telling everyone in the family you hate Ethan out of jealousy and want to destroy the family. Are you okay? Apparently, my parents hadn't just blamed me, they'd invented an entirely false story. They claimed I had abandoned family, that I was a cold-hearted person, and surprised that I was holding on to hundreds of thousands of dollars, but refused to help my brother because of personal grudges. I should have felt angry, but all I felt was exhausted. It was as if they were rewriting my entire life, using the voice of manipulators. I didn't intend to defend myself. I knew those who trusted me wouldn't swallow their lies. But then something unexpected happened. One by one, relatives I thought had long forgotten me started reaching out not to blame, but to support me. Aunt Carol from Ohio wrote, "Lydia, I don't believe what they're saying. Your mom once called me asking for money after Ethan lost $50,000 in a startup project that never existed. When I refused, they cut off contact for 3 years. My cousin Mark recalled a time Ethan blamed him for losing client data during a summer internship. He almost cost me my scholarship. Your parents didn't investigate. They just told me to take responsibility to protect the family's image." My cousin Alina messaged, "Remember Ethan's 18th birthday, when they hired a band and threw a big outdoor party, while for yours it was just a microwaved cake? I remember the look on your face, silent but clear as a mirror. I read each message, each recovered memory. For years, I thought I was the only one cast aside, but it turned out I wasn't alone. My parents' favoritism toward Ethan wasn't just about pampering him. They sacrificed everyone else to prop up the image of their perfect son. I started remembering not just the times my achievements were ignored, but also the times I was labeled too sensitive, dramatic, simply for daring to question them. They always told me I was overthinking. Turns out, I was just the only one awake enough to notice something was deeply wrong. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote a long email to the relatives who had reached out. Thank you all for believing and sharing your stories. I'm not writing to justify myself, just to say I'm tired of begging for recognition. I no longer want to be part of a family where a daughter's worth is measured by how many times she can forgive those who disregarded her. I pressed send, then leaned back in my chair. Inside, instead of sadness, was an oddly comforting sense of relief. I had thought cutting ties with my parents would mean losing everything, but in reality, only by breaking free did I finally see who truly stood by me. A day later, I logged out of all my old social media accounts, changed my phone number, and sent a letter to building management instructing them not to allow anyone outside my approved guest list onto my floor. I changed the locks on my front door and installed a camera at the entrance. I was no longer afraid of being called the ungrateful child. I was Lydia, and I had survived without anyone's pity. News about Ethan's release on bail broke on a foggy Monday morning. I got the notification from a friend in the legal field, along with a brief message. Your brother's family managed to handle it. He confessed everything for a plea deal. Not long afterward, the press published the details. Ethan had signed a cooperation agreement with federal investigators, providing the names of over 7 senior executives, along with dozens of emails and falsified internal transaction records. In exchange, his sentence was reduced to 12 months in prison and 2 years of community service, without financial penalties, a relatively generous deal, considering the severity of the case. My parents, according to a maternal relative, mortgaged their second house in Bend to cover the bail. There were even rumors that they took a private loan from one of my father's old friends, a businessman known for his dislike of trouble. Either way, they succeeded. Their beloved son was allowed home until the official court date. As for me, I remained silent, not a single word. No opening doors, not even a backward glance. I had officially requested building management add my parents' names to the no visitation list. I changed my phone number and blocked every email associated with them. Ethan, too, was permanently blocked. No more pleading messages. No more midnight calls from my mother screaming in desperation. No more threats that you'll regret this when we're dead. I didn't want to know how they lived, nor did I care whether Ethan repeated his mistakes or not. Some called me heartless. Others said I was ungrateful. A few distant relatives even labeled me a traitor to my own blood. But they weren't there when I lay alone in the hospital, attached to breathing tubes, and weighed down by loneliness, like heavy chains. They hadn't spent 31 years living in the shadow of blatant favoritism. They weren't always pushed aside, always told, your problems don't matter as much as your brother's. I was the only one paying the price for my parents' abandonment, and now I was the only one brave enough to cut that cord. These days, I wake up earlier. I learned to make coffee by hand rather than gulping it down quickly from a machine. I spent time reading books on the balcony, where morning sunlight filters gently through the leaves, shimmering on my damp hair after a shower. No more phone alerts making my heart seize. No more emails filled with manipulation, complaints, or guilt trips. One Saturday morning, as I walked around the lake near my home, I paused to sit on a familiar wooden bench. Beside me, an elderly woman was feeding breadcrumbs to ducks. She turned to me and smiled. You look at peace. I smiled back for the first time in my life, and it wasn't just polite conversation. I truly felt lighter, no more burden of being the good child. No more trying to prove my worth to people who never saw me as a complete person. No more fighting to be seen, heard, or loved. I was just myself, and that was enough. My apartment became a peaceful haven. The frames on my wall no longer contained family photos, but pictures I'd taken on short trips: Seattle, Napa Valley, Santa Fe. I began revisiting old dreams, ideas I'd previously hidden for fear of ridicule. I started painting and joined a support group for adults who had experienced toxic family relationships. I no longer needed my family's validation to feel worthy. I rebuilt my life, brick by brick, solid, unbreakable. In the end, I didn't need to win. I just needed peace. And I found it not in anyone else's embrace, but within myself. Lydia's story is clear proof that sometimes blood isn't synonymous with unconditional love. Prolonged favoring, manipulation, and disregard can force someone to make decisive choices to protect themselves. Though labeled as a family traitor, Lydia chose freedom rather than continue carrying responsibilities that weren't hers. Ultimately, she discovered that self-worth doesn't come from others' approval, but from knowing when to say no and being true to herself. What do you think about Lydia's decision? Was she too cold? Or was it a necessary act of self-protection? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more touching and profound real-life stories.